Okay, good morning. We will get started. Thank you for joining us today for the Procurement and Contracts Campus Purchasing and Policy Training. So today we are just going to do a high-level overview of our policies and procedures, just to kind of give you an idea of what our office is responsible for and some of the processes that we have to undertake in order to process your request. So please note that this is being recorded and will be posted on our website for your future reference. To prevent any background noise, I have muted all of your lines. If you have any questions, please type it in the chat or raise your hand and we will try to get to all of your questions. If we are unable to get to your questions, we will address them at the conclusion of our training and we will email all of the participants. So my name is Maria Hernandez. I am the Director of Procurement and Contracts, and I oversee our day-to-day procurement and contracting operations. Anything that has to do with a purchase, a contract, construction related, whether it be repair, maintenance, building, a new building, it goes through our office. We also are responsible for the facilities leasing and scheduling of our property to outside entities. And then with me, I have Eileen.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Eileen Madrid, buyer two. I've been with CSUDAs for almost 4 years. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Eileen. All right, so I'm going to pass it over to Eileen. Eileen will cover some of our overarching laws and policies, and then she will turn it over back to me, and then I will go over some of our more specific policies and procedures for the campus. Go ahead, Eileen.
Okay, good morning, everyone, again. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'll be assisting Maria in the training. I'll be going over some of the slides in the beginning of the training. So let's get started. Who are we? We are the state of California, acting in a higher education capacity. We are not a nonprofit organization. We are not a tax-exempt entity, meaning we must pay taxes. When you do your requisition, your PCAR reconciliation, processing an invoice, we must pay taxes. We go by different names: the state of California, trustees of the California State University, the CSU, and California State University, Dominguez Hills. Next, we have the hierarchy of governing laws. We are governed by a series of laws. Depending on the type of contract we issue, different codes and regulations apply. Some examples are Education Code, Government Code, Public Contract Code, Labor Code, etc. We are governed by resolutions issued by the Board of Trustees, which comes from the Chancellor's Office in the form of coded memoranda, executive orders, and CSU contracts and procurement policy. This is what we use to conduct our day-to-day operations to ensure that all activity is consistent with contract and procurement policy. The next slide, we are going to talk about procurement and contracts responsibilities. We are responsible for procuring goods and services, executing and negotiating contracts, which includes goods, services, construction, student placement agreement, and facilities leases, administration of the P-card and fleet card program, bidding out informal, formal solicitation process, which includes goods, services, construction, providing procurement and contracting support to the campus, complying with the state and CSU policies, ensuring open competition for state dollars to obtain the best value for our campus. Lastly, we have to ensure fair, ethical, and professional business practice when spending state dollars. Next, we have a snapshot, an overview of financial departments and the responsibility. There are 4 departments under admin and finance that we have financial responsibilities and separation of duties. Procurement and contracts is responsible for requisitions, purchase orders, service orders, contracts, agreements, construction, lease equipment, lease license, real property, student placement agreements, P-card and fleet program administration. So the purpose of this slide is to show you the different tasks that each department is responsible for. We have often gotten questions about invoices, so we will direct that to accounts payable for payment inquiry or processing. So in addition to the previous slide, we have to comply to our CSU journal provisions, which is our terms and conditions and insurance requirement. When a requisition is submitted to our office, the buyers review all associated documentation. If the vendor has included terms and conditions that conflict with CSU journal provisions, the buyers will undergo a negotiation process to ensure that terms are to the best interest of the university and limit our liability. The negotiation process timeframe varies depending on the complexity of the contract. In addition, the buyers will also undergo a risk assessment to determine if insurance is required before the vendor can provide services. I will discuss the insurance in the next couple slides. So in addition to applying our journal provision from the previous slide, we also have to consider applying the IT supplemental provision when processing all information and communication technology, such as hardware, software, and online solutions require 4 significant steps. First, you have to complete the ICT form. You have to gather all your information and the accessibility information. Second, the ATI coordinator then reviews the accessibility documentation, and depending on the impact to the CSUDH community, he reviews the product or services that communicates with the vendor about any accessibility barriers the product or services may pose to a person with disability. Third, the information security officer will notify the requester if SOC 2 or higher education community vendor assessment toolkit, which is short for HACVAT, security documentation is required. All qualifying software, hardware, and online solutions purchases that will allow a vendor to access, store, transmit, or otherwise manage CSU protected data shall go through a security review and approval process. And lastly, the IT approval ensures that IT has sufficient resources available for our software implementation and provides an IT opportunity to confirm if the license being purchased is already available to staff, faculty, and thus saving time and money. So once you receive your final approval for the ATI, security, and IT approval, it should be attached to your requisition. Insurance. I'm sorry. So as I've mentioned earlier, in addition to applying the proper general provision, we also have to ensure that we obtain proper insurance coverage. All contractors, all contractors, vendors, or service providers coming onto university premises to do work or provide services are required to have insurance. So depending on the work being performed, our office will determine what insurance coverage limits apply. General and auto liability and workers' comp will apply. When we are hiring a consultant, professional liability will apply. When we are contracting hazardous goods and services, the environmental liability will apply. So in addition to pre-award insurance, we also require a document called additional insured endorsement. This ensures that in the event of personal or property damage or any other claims caused during the performance of the contract, the university will be able to access the vendor's insurance to recover any claims or losses for which the vendor or contractor may be responsible for. Next, we'll be discussing the delegation of procurement authority. It is very important to remember the importance of following the delegation of procurement authority. When you submit a requisition with a quote or proposal, make sure your department doesn't sign it because you don't have the proper delegation of authority. The delegation of procurement authority is as follows. At the top, the state of California. State of California, who then delegates to the Board of Trustees. Board of Trustees then delegates to the Chancellor. The Chancellor then delegates to the campus president. The campus president then delegates to the Vice President of Admin and Finance, or CFO, who then delegates to the Procurement and Contracts Office. There are two instances where you are provided limited delegation via the P card and direct payment options. Which is the next slide. So P card holders have predetermined monthly and single purchase limits on the P card, meaning that your limited delegation for P card use are only up to those predetermined limits. Likewise, with the direct pay form, there are pre-approved categories end users can use to allow accounts payable to pay invoices directly to vendors. The limited delegation is only provided for those pre-approved categories. Anything outside of those categories needs to be processed via an authorized procurement payment option, which Maria will discuss next. That will conclude all the slides I'll be discussing today. Any questions? All right, if you don't have any questions, thank you for your time and attention again. I'll pass it off to Maria for the remainder of the training.
Thank you, Eileen. Okay, so now for the fun stuff. So our office has 4 approved purchasing mechanisms. If you want to purchase anything, make a payment for a good or service, you will have to use one of the pre-approved mechanisms. The first is a requisition. The second is a procurement purchase card. Essentially, is a credit card that will be assigned if you apply for it and you qualify for it. It will be assigned to you to make pre-approved purchases under a list of pre-approved categories. The third is a direct pay form. This is essentially a request to pay an invoice directly with the vendor, and this does not go through our office. At the top of the direct pay form, there is a drop-down category list that provides you a list of items that you can use the direct pay form for. It has been pre-approved categories, and you can process that invoice directly with accounts payable. If the item is not listed in the drop-down category, you will have to use a requisition form to get your item completed. Please keep in mind that items that need to be purchased need to be submitted to our office prior to a good being delivered and prior to a service being completed. If a good or a service is requested after the fact, meaning it has already arrived or the service has already started, even partially started, that will be considered an unauthorized purchase. So our office will be sending instructions to the department, letting you know that we will be canceling that requisition, and we will request that you complete the 4th mechanism here, which is the unauthorized purchase approval form. This form serves as a direct payment request, but will be flagged as an unauthorized purchase. The form will has specific requirements, instructions that need to be followed. Same with the requisition. If it is a payment to a new vendor, we will still need to gather all of the required information as, for example, the vendor 204 data form. Every payment we sent out, we need a vendor data record form on file. If it is a payment to an independent contractor to provide services, for example, speakers, we will require an independent contractor form. And if it is an IT purchase that was not pre-approved, you will need to have the 3 levels of approval that Eileen went over: IT, ATI, and security approval prior to that being completed. This process does mean that your payment to the vendor is going to be delayed because now we have to go through an additional process to complete that payment. So our priority is to handle requisitions that have been submitted in a timely manner, and then we will address all of the unauthorized purchases. So once again, these are our 4 payment mechanisms that you as the end user will be using to request any goods or services. Any questions on that before I move forward? And please feel free to unmute or raise your hand if you have a question. Okay.
Hi, Maria. Sorry, this is Myra. I do have a question about the last slide. So if the payment will be done via a direct pay form, you said that we still need to get approval from procurement, correct?
No, the
No.
direct pay form does not go through our office. The only time a direct pay form comes to me for approval is when a category is not selected or not on the list. So typically, if a purchase is made and you're trying to get direct pay approval and the category hasn't been pre-approved, accounting will route it to me to provide approval or make an exception.
Okay.
Depending on the circumstances, I may make an exception depending on what it is, but most of the time I will have to have you resubmit your request using an unauthorized purchase approval form.
Thank you.
So the next slide covers essentially our general process for purchasing goods. So it starts with a requisition. The buyer will receive that requisition, review for appropriateness, gather all the information, and issue a purchase order. That purchase order will be sent to the vendor and copy the department. Once the vendor provides the good or makes a delivery of the good, that will be sent to the receiving warehouse. The receiving warehouse then receives it in the system, marks it as complete, and they receive a package slip. This is our confirmation for delivery. Once they receive it in the system, accounting or the vendor will send an invoice to accounting, and then accounting will confirm that the item has been received in the system, what we call a three-way match. We have a match of a PO, a delivery, and a payment. And then accounting will release payment. Our standard payment terms are net 30 in arrears, meaning that once an invoice comes in, it is logged in the system and the system will not release it until 30 days after that invoice has been received or the date the invoice has been dated. Give me a second, I see a question. I have a question. Can you explain when a requisition should be used as opposed to using a P card? Yes, so we will go very briefly over that. On our P card policy, there is a list of pre-approved items that can be used using the P card. There are restricted items and there are prohibited items. If it is on the prohibited list, you cannot use the P card. If it is on the restricted item list, you can use the P card provided you follow the instructions and get approval from either the P card administrator or often, IT, if it's an IT good. So we have the policy details exactly what you need to do in order to get approval for a restricted item. If you review that P card policy and the item does not show up on the approved list, then you will have to submit a requisition. We recently, a few months ago, added a list to the IT products that are allowed on P card and those that will require pre-approval or a requisition. So please review that. And if you have questions, you can route your P card questions or approval requests to our new P card administrator, who is Eileen Madrid. And if you have any other questions on or need assistance determining whether it should be on a requisition or on a P card or a direct pay form, just go ahead and shoot us over an email. Did that answer your question, Myra or Angelica?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. So next we're going to move forward with the requisition process overview. This is also on our website. On this PowerPoint and this training will be uploaded on our website, so you have access to it. But this link here will take you to our requisition process overview. So once the department has a need for good or services, they will determine if it is P card eligible. If it is, you can proceed with the P card. Services are prohibited or restricted on the P card. Most likely, you will not get approval to pay services on a P card unless it is determined to be low risk, and that will have to be submitted to the P card administrator for review. The user will determine if it is direct pay eligible. Again, go to the drop-down category of the direct pay form to make that determination. If it is direct pay eligible, or you will follow the process and go complete the direct pay form, include your invoice, and then accounting will take it over from there. If it is not eligible, you will submit a requisition in PeopleSoft. If you do not have access to PeopleSoft, there is a CFS access request form that you can complete to get access to the system. And there is also training that has been pre-recorded on our website for to show you how step-by-step on how to enter a requisition. There is also upcoming training for requisitions in May. So keep an eye out for that announcement from HR. Once a requisition is entered in the system, your approver will review it, budget check, and approve it in the system. If it is not budget checked or approved in the system, it will not make it to us, so we have no visibility. So please make sure that it is approved and budget checked so that we have access to it and it can be assigned to a buyer. Once that happens, we will do a review of the requisition. It will be assigned to a buyer. The first review is essentially we're doing a delegation of authority verification. Every requisition, every change order that comes through our office goes through a verification review to ensure that the approver that approved that requisition has delegation of authority to financially commit the department, expend those funds. Once that is verified, it will be assigned to a buyer. And then the next process is what the buyer undergoes in order to process your request. Some of the items that they will review is ensure that there is a quote, a proposal submitted. If it is an independent contractor request, they will go through the independent contractor review process. If you have questions on that independent contractor process, I have linked it here on our website. There is also a training that has been recorded that is available on our website. Excuse me. So that you have all of the information necessary to process your independent contractor request. They will confirm if it needs hospitality approval. If it does, we will need that form submitted. If it's a new vendor, they will request a vendor data record form. We ask that you assist in that process because once a requisition comes to our office, there will be a delay. And if you send the form, the link to the vendor and ask them to submit it and upload it to the Dropbox, by the time it comes to us, that process will be completed and we don't have to wait for the vendor to submit that to us. So if you will, please request a form if the vendor is not in the system. And once you are entering a requisition in PeopleSoft, if they don't show up in the vendor list, you know that they are a new vendor. They will determine if you're purchasing a furniture, there is a furniture process on our website that will be amended in the next couple of weeks, but there is a furniture process. And if it is a IT software, hardware, online solution, it will have to come with IT approvals. Those are the 3 layers of approvals that Eileen discussed. The buyer will confirm that that is completed. They will also undergo a review for bid thresholds. We will discuss the thresholds in the next few slides. Essentially, anything over $50,000 will undergo a review for possible how to meet some competition requirements. I will go over that shortly. They will do a search to see if there's any possible agreements that have already been executed that we may be able to utilize to circumvent that bidding process. Excuse me. They will go over insurance requirements review, essentially conducting a risk assessment to determine if insurance is required for the service that's being completed. And they will review terms and conditions, as well as include COVID-19 guidelines for vendors that are going to be on campus to ensure that they comply with our COVID-19 guidelines. Those are some of the processes that reviews that the buyer conducts when they are assigned a requisition. After that review is completed, the PO will be dispatched. If you see the status in PeopleSoft as dispatched, that means that the buyer has completed the purchase order. If you see a status of approved or open, that means that the buyer is still working on your requisition. After that is completed, then the vendor will receive the purchase order, the department will be copied, and then we can start the accounts payable receiving process, which I mentioned earlier. Any questions on this process? Okay.
I'm sorry. I have a question about the process between us submitting a requisition and it becoming a PO. How do we know when it becomes a PO and it's okay for, like in my situation, I started this position in January. The previous admin left halfway through 2021. So they've been without an admin, and a lot of things just kind of were sitting, waiting for somebody to come in and figure them out and process them. So there's a lot of invoices that I have that are pending. And so one of them required a rec. I submitted that, and I have the invoice still kind of just waiting until I hear that the PO has been processed. Like, so how do the admins who enter the recs know that a PO has been?
I will, so that's process we go over during our requisition training. During our requisition training, we show you how to log in, check status, and check what buyer has been assigned to your requisition. And we don't cover that in this training, but it is on our website. So if you will communicate with me after this training, I will walk you through that process. On our FAQ on our website, it also has a process of how do I know what buyer is assigned to my requisition? And there is just follow that process and you can see who's assigned. Once the requisition is converted into a PO and is sent to the vendor, you will get BCC'd on that communication. And that's when you know when to send an invoice over for payment. My question for that would be, if you already have an invoice, there should be no requisition pending, right? Because we shouldn't have an invoice until the PO has been issued. So if an invoice is received in our office, we're gonna flag it as an unauthorized purchase, and we're gonna start making some calls to you, the department, and the vendor to find out if the item or the good has been, if the good has been delivered or the service has been started, and then we will cancel it and have you process that as an unauthorized purchase. So our office does not issue purchase orders for goods or services that have already occurred or been delivered. So so connect with me after so that we can go over that process and I can show you how to find that information.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to continue with our requisition process overview. Again, it's the process is on our website. It goes over essentially what I just went over, but I want to go over some of the items. So in an effort to eliminate the potential for fraud, we need to ensure that the person entering the requisition is not the same person as approving the requisition. So this is part of our delegation of authority verification that is completed. So when a requisition comes into our office, we make sure that the individual entering it is not the same person that approved it, and that the person that approved it is delegated authority to do so. So just a quick note for you that we do conduct that verification and we need to have that separation of duties for those two functions. A purchase requisition is not an authorization to make a purchase. It is simply a request for our office to issue a purchase order, send it to the vendor on your behalf. A PO or a contract issued by our office is an official agreement, a legal document between the university, the vendor, to provide the good or the service. Only our office has the delegated authority to financially obligate the university. As Eileen mentioned earlier during her review, The delegation of authority is issued to the president. The president delegates it to our vice president of admin and finance, who then delegates it down to our office. So anytime that there is a contract involved that we are going to contractually or financially bind the university, our office is the only office that can do that. You as the user have been delegated limited delegation of authority, which Eileen went over. So you can use the two purchasing mechanisms that give you limited authority, which is the P-card and the direct pay form. If you have any changes or alterations to the PO that is originally issued, you are to submit a change order request form to make changes to the original purchase order. You can increase, decrease the quantity, add additional work, or cancel an order. If we accept the change order, we will be issuing a revised purchase order, which will be sent to the vendor and the department will be copied. Any questions on this? Okay, so these are requisition submittal instructions to help us process your procurement a little bit easier and faster. So once again, we require a requester and an approver. We will require an IT access form. So those 3 steps that Eileen went over, we need to make sure those come in. And in order for us to not delay your requisition request processing, we need to make sure that the information is completed, it's submitted with sufficient detail for us to understand what we're procuring. Some of the examples that we don't want to see miscellaneous services. We want to see a clear and accurate description. Campus-wide landscaping services for fiscal year 21-22 is a better description than miscellaneous services. If we see miscellaneous services, what that means is that we're just going to have to stop what we're doing, pick up the phone, make a phone call, or send an email and wait for a response before we can proceed. So the more information we have up front, the faster it will be to process your request. Please make sure that your requisition is itemized. If you are ordering 5 items, you will add 5 lines to your requisition. If you're ordering 10 items and we get a requisition with 1 line item, we will send it back and have you re-enter it. So in order to avoid that delay, please ensure that you itemize your requisitions. Sales tax will be entered on our side. So when you enter the requisition, you can omit the sales tax and we will add that on our side. Shipping and handling must be listed in the comments. We have a specific area on the purchase order side where we enter shipping and handling charges. So, and I'll go over this in a little bit. There is a comment in the requisition where you just enter it in the description box, how much they're charging for shipping. You don't need to add a line for that. Labor and installation must be included on a separate line in the PO. And then also another potential item that causes delays is that your quote is no longer accepted. So if you are submitting a requisition, just make sure that the quote is still good, is still valid. Sometimes quotes are not valid over 30 days, and it'll have a comment on the quote from the vendor valid through a certain date. So if we get a quote that is expired, then that'll cause a delay because the buyer now has to contact the vendor and request a new quote. So just please make sure that your quote is still valid and it is not older than 30 days. Some quotes we received have a longer validity period, such as 60 or 90 days, but it really depends. Okay, so when you are submitted a requisition, and again, we have a requisition training coming up in May. There's also a recording on that requisition training that was previously conducted, so you can also go to that webpage and view the recording. This is the comment that auto-populates when you select it in the requisition. We want to know who have you been working with do you have a vendor contact name, phone, email? That way we don't have to, go and try to search for the vendor's information. Is it a new vendor? If it is, did you request a 204? Who is the contact person in the department? Who is going to be responsible for this purchase order? What we want to know is sometimes the person that enters it is the person that is the contact, but oftentimes the person that enters the requisition is not the individual that's going to receive it. So we want to know who are we going to communicate on this order if we have any specific questions. Where is it going to be delivered and what's the term of the service? Term of service is obviously if it's a good, it's a one-time delivery that won't apply. This doesn't mean that you have to completely fill it out. It's just some of the questions that we will have. Is there freight shipping? This is where you will enter that. Is it hospitality? Did you upload the hospitality form? These are more of reminders, reminding you to make sure that you attach if applicable. Is it IT, hardware, software, online solutions? Please upload your approval. Is it furniture? Did you get a drawing, a layout, ADA compliance, and a work order in place? Is it an independent contractor? Did you get the independent contractor completed and uploaded in the system? So this just helps us to help you get the information that we need so that we can process your request quicker. Any questions on this? Okay. Here are some other requisition processing delays. Like I mentioned, insufficient information. We don't have a vendor form. We don't have an independent contractor form. We don't have a hospitality form. There is no vendor contact information. There's no quote. There's no proposal attached. We have a pricing discrepancy. You enter $50 on your rec, but then the quote says $70. So if there's a discrepancy, then we have to stop and try to pick up the phone and try to verify what is correct. Often there's just delay in the vendors responding to us. So that's just some of the delays. Again, quotes older than 30 days will delay the processing. If we have to obtain insurance from the vendor, that will cause about a 3 day to 1 week delay, depending on how quickly we can get that communication and that information from the vendor. So if it is a service and the vendor will be on campus performing any work, we will have to have insurance on file. You don't have to worry about that. That is something that the buyer handles, but we just want to let you know that that might cause a delay. When you are requesting a good or a service, oftentimes on the quote or on the proposal, you will notice that there is either a link with terms and conditions, or there are additional pages added with terms and conditions that they want us to agree to. That is when the buyer will have to review the terms and conditions, ensure that they don't conflict with our current CSU general provisions. And if they do, we go through a negotiation process to try to remove terms that are not at the best interest of the university. And then, so that process, depending on the complexity of the request, typically software deals take a little bit longer because they have substantial terms and conditions that we need to negotiate. So if it's it's a pretty straightforward, we typically can just process that. If it's a service, we start to deal with terms and conditions. And then when we start to deal with consulting software related implementations, that's when we go into quite a bit of a negotiation process. If your request is over $50,000 and we have to do an informal or a formal RFP, IFP, RFQ process, meaning we have to go out there and get additional quotes or conduct a formal RFP, then that will cause a delay on your request. I'll go over that a little bit shortly in a few slides. If we have to go and get approvals that you did not include, IT, ATI, often security, sometimes we have to verify with risk, we have to ensure furniture, the process and approvals are obtained, and sometimes we have to verify with legal. That will cause a delay on your process, on your request, processing your request. Any questions on this? Okay. All right, so now we're going to get into what we call after the fact requests or confirming orders. If, as I mentioned earlier, if a purchase is already delivered, or a service has already started, that is considered an unauthorized purchase. It is considered an after the fact submittal. Our office will not process requests that fall in that category. If we get a requisition on February 1st, but the service that was already started on January 30th, we will cancel it and send it back to you and have you complete an unauthorized purchase approval form. A purchase order needs to be in place, sent to the vendor before any work can be completed or a good can be delivered. So that is the process I have already covered. So you're essentially committing university funds when you have not been delegated authority to do so. Once again, your requisition will be canceled and we will ask you to follow that unauthorized purchase approval process. And here are some of the reasons why after the fact purchases are an issue. Number one, they're just a violation of state law and CSU policy. So the authority to purchase goods and services and enter into contracts is delegated through, I'm not going to go over all of these laws and executive orders, but essentially there are policies and laws in place that prohibit us from entering into contracts or getting delivery of goods without the authorization to do so. On our website, if you go under the requisition process, you will find that if you make a purchase, authorize a purchase without being delegated the authority to do so, you can be held personally responsible for this payment. The university can say, we did not authorize this and make this a personal responsibility of the approver, the individual who authorized the request without following the proper policies. Second reason why this is an issue, it's because it can be an audit finding. First, there's no delegation of authority for the individual authorizing this financial or contractual commitment. We will not issue a PO that with an invoice that predates the PO. So all of our purchase orders are, when the PO is dated, the invoice should come after. So we are looking for that invoice to be dated after the PO is issued. Another reason why this is an issue is because it opens up the university to potential liability. And this is mostly when we are entering into contracts for services, software purchases or implementations. We have not conducted a risk assessment to determine if insurance is needed. And if we don't get insurance and then there is an incident on campus, now we have exposed the university to potential liability. We have no access to file a claim against the vendor's insurance company to try to recover any losses. So that is one of the items. We also can potentially enter in, the end user signing a contract or a quote who has not been delegated authority to do so will essentially enter into unfavorable terms that our buyers have not had an opportunity to review. And we are no longer able to go back because the process has already been completed, or a good has been delivered, or a service has been provided. So we essentially have no leverage in renegotiating those terms. So we need to ensure that any contractual document that needs to be reviewed is sent to our office for to ensure that we are protecting the best interest of the university. Another item is, we have that missed opportunity by entering into these after the fact purchases. We have lost an opportunity to potentially save some money, enter into favorable terms. So that's why we ask that you work with our office in advance so that we don't run into these issues. And then lastly, by processing an authorized purchase request, as I mentioned, it's going to delay your processing. It's going to delay us issuing a payment to the vendor. which essentially is just going to start creating a tarnished relationship, give us a bad reputation for not paying our vendors on time. And it really does undermine the relationships that we have built with our vendors to, you know, to enter into these contracts and provide the service. So just be leery of that. And when in doubt, just contact our office and loop us in as early as possible so we can avoid these situations. Okay, we are going to move on to prohibited practices. Any questions on what I have covered so far? All right, so as I mentioned, after the fact purchases are prohibited. No employee shall place orders outside of their limited delegation of authority, which has been stated as just a P card and a direct paid process. Conflict of interest, no employee may make or participate in decisions where there is a personal financial interest. Another prohibited practice, endorsements. We do not endorse any commercial products or services. If we are entering into a contract with a vendor is asking us, as part of entering into this contract, you will we will market and endorse our partnership. They want to put you know, our logo on a website saying we have just entered into a contract with CSU Dominguez Hills, you know, for services. That's not allowed. We do not endorse commercial products or services. And if we do, it requires the approval of legal counsel. We are also prohibited from releasing bids with restricted specifications. Meaning if we're going out to bid for, let's say, refreshing our copier services, our copy machines, you know, we cannot restrict these specs to say, I want 100 Ricoh model M150 copiers. We have to be able to be fair and open that competition to other manufacturers of copiers. So we want to make sure that we provide specifications, not be brand specific. We are also prohibited from splitting orders. So our buyers also do undergo this process. If we receive a requisition for $25,000 today for Staples, and tomorrow we receive another requisition for $25,000. Staples is not a good example for you know, another company. Then it just looks like you are splitting your orders to avoid going through a bidding process because of our bid limits. So that is something that is also prohibited. We do not allow advance payment. As I mentioned earlier, our payment terms are net 30 in arrears. We will pay vendors 30 days after the good or after the service is completed. We can make an exception on a case-by-case basis depending on the circumstance. So if we are getting in-kind value or consideration for making an advance payment, then we will make an exception, but it will require VP approval. Sometimes we enter into contracts with the smaller vendors that require a deposit before they can start any work. You know, you can reach out to our office and then we can discuss a potential deposit request. For the smaller vendors, we tend to make an exception, a small exception for a deposit in order for them to start working on an item for you. But again, it's going to have to be after the PO is issued, we will authorize a deposit. So it's a case-by-case basis, so just work with our office if a vendor is requesting a deposit. All right, we're going to jump into student placement agreements. Any questions on anything thus far? Okay. And again, I know this is a lot of information, but this is all of the items that we cover in our office, and we are just doing a high-level overview. If you have more specific questions, feel free to reach out and we will address them. On our website, we have a process that explains how the student agreement requests are to be conducted or how to be requested, be processed through our office. So we provided a link there for you that'll take you directly to our website, and it'll go over that process. We have hundreds, thousands of student placement agreements. So before we start a new process, we ask that you first check if a contract is already in place with a specific site before we start another contract review process. So there is our online contract solution, which we call OCS, is linked here. If you do not have access to it, please reach out to me and we will grant you access. Please allow 3 to 4 weeks prior to the commencement of an agreement for processing. Sometimes it could take longer than 3 to 4 weeks to process an agreement, depending on the site that we're entering in and depending on the type of agreement that we're processing. So an affiliation or a student placement agreement essentially just provides the authority for a student to be on the facility site to conduct their fieldwork experience. It ensures that the site's personnel will supervise the student and provide a meaningful experience, and it defines the relationship between the university, the site, and the student. An agreement between the university and the site is only necessary for unpaid internships that are for academic credit. Paid internships do not require an agreement because the university and the site, between the university and the site, since the university is not coordinating the internship experience. We have approved templates for the university. If you are using an approved template, that processing time diminishes. So we can turn around a pre-approved template pretty quickly. When a site provides their own agreement, that's when we experience the delays. So it is the responsibility of the academic program to identify the site, send them the approved template for review and approval. Once that agreement is signed, it will be uploaded into our OCS system for our buyers to process. Please do not backdate an agreement. We want to make sure that if it is backdated, we will change it on our end to be dated the date that it was signed or the date that the placement is going to begin. Sorry. Once the agreement is finalized, signed, it will be sent to the facility and also to the department that submitted the request. So you have a copy of the agreement that is fully executed. It will also be uploaded into the OCS system, so you have access to find that agreement at a later date. Only procurement and contracts is authorized to sign affiliation agreements, and students should not begin their internships before the agreement is approved. Once again, it's procurement and contracts is only authorized to do this because we have been granted the delegation of authority to contractually bind the university. The students are not covered by the insurance programs until the agreement is fully executed. That is why we do not want students on the site until the agreement is processed. We have 2 different insurance programs for students registered in different types of programs. We have clinical and essentially non-clinical insurance coverage. So that insurance will take effect as soon as that contract is signed. If the site is requesting any changes to our university template, you will email procurement@csudh.edu to assist in that revision. Let's see. So once again, the site-specific agreements, if we send them our CSUDH approved template and they say, oh, we're not going to sign your agreement, you need to sign ours, then that site-specific agreement will be uploaded into OCS, and then procurement and contracts will contact the site directly to negotiate the terms. Contract expiration notices will be sent to the the individual who originally entered the request in OCS. This is an automatic notification that is sent from the system, letting you know that your agreement is going to expire. And if you want to renew it, you will let us know and we will renew that contract. Well, if you want to renew it, it is your notice to start that renewal process, which essentially starts this all over again. Send the new agreement, get it signed, upload it in OCS with the new term. Our standard approved templates have a 5-year term. So if we execute an agreement, it'll be valid for 5 years. If you are processing a site-specific agreement, it depends on the term that they're approving, typically 1, 3, or 5 years. It is our recommendation that you create a generic department email so that the notices are sent to the department email and not to an individual, just to ensure that if we have employee turnover, those messages are not, lost, and that it is sent to a generic program email that will continue to receive the notices even after an individual departs. Any questions on this process? Once again, agreement processing times do vary. So we do get a large volume of requests that come through our office. Standard templates maybe take about, once you submit it, will take less than a week. If we are having to negotiate a site-specific agreement, that'll take 3 to 4 weeks, and sometimes it will take longer. We have had contracts that we worked on for a year before we finally entered into a fully executed agreement. And this will typically happen with the bigger hospitals that, it takes us a little bit longer to go back and forth and reach an agreement on a specific term. All right, so now we're going to get off student agreements and get into some of the mandated programs that our office is required to comply with. We have 3 programs here: Certified Small Business, Disabled Veteran Business Enterprise, and Sustainability. So our office is required to award or issue a contract to certified small business that has been certified with the state of California. This is 5% of our total annual spend. So this is a requirement by the state. We are also required to award 3% of our total annual spend to disabled veteran business enterprises. And then we also have sustainability goals that we have to report on. So anytime the university is buying anything we have 11 categories, some of them are here. Anytime we buy paper, plastic, metal, tires, oils, we have to report that to the state, and we generate reports and provide that to them on an annual basis. It's a little difficult to achieve this certified small business requirement because small business tend to be a little bit more expensive than the big companies. But our goal is not just the CSU, DH, it's the system as a whole, the state as a whole, that has to comply with this requirement. So we do our best. We'll go over some of the snapshot of how we have done in the past. Disabled Veteran Enterprise, we do good in this area because this is mandated. This one, we do not make a mandated requirement on bids, but the disabled veteran is mandated. So this one is easier to achieve. So these are some of the numbers for fiscal year 18-19 for small business. Out of the 23 campuses, including the Chancellor's Office, only 3 campuses achieved this goal: Sacramento, LA, and Fresno. You can see the percentages that they achieved, meaning that 25% of their annual total spend for buying all goods, all services, construction, anything, Sacramento achieved 33.74% went to small businesses. All right, so here's how we have done over the past few years. In 17-18, we, this blue part here is the small business. We only achieved 14% small business out of the 25% goal. We've only reached 14%. DVBE, we have done good. We always achieve that goal. Small businesses where we struggle a little bit. In 18-19, we only achieved 11.56%. And we did really good with our DVBE because we have a lot of construction projects on campus. And again, DVBE is mandated, so that is easier to achieve. In 19-20, we have quite a bit of spend because of, again, construction buildings that gave us a higher spend. We achieved 11.60 small business and 3.97 DVBE. And then finally, something that we have never done in 2021, which is our lower spend, we actually achieved 25.05% small business spend and 3.02 DVBE spend. So this is the first year in 2021 where we have reached this goal. All right, so some of the, what can you do to help us? Communicate with us, before starting a project to help us achieve some of those goals. Allow realistic timeframes to conduct competitive solicitations. If your procurement request is over $50,000, work with us and see what we can do to get you better pricing. Reduce maverick spending. This is when the end users, P card holders or requesters go to the .coms and place the orders instead of using our previously negotiated contracts that have been negotiated to reduce pricing. So what we call maverick spending is essentially purchasing from non-contracted agreements where we are missing out on potential savings. Visit our procurement webpage and review our policy and updates and familiarize yourself with the process. Encourage your staff to attend our procurement and contracts trainings and remind your staff not to sign any vendor documents. Communicate with your direct reports to provide feedback on procurement issues. If we don't know, we can't help. So the next I want to talk about are general bid thresholds. These are our bid limits that I discussed a little bit earlier. Anything under $50,000, we don't have to bid out, but it is recommended that we do at least an informal solicitation, meaning that we at least get 3 quotes so that we can ensure that we're getting the best value for our buck. So under 50K, we will not question it, but we do recommend that you get 3 quotes. Over $50,000, but under 100 is considered an informal bid, which means we just require 3 written quotes. If it's over $100,000, we will have to do a formal bid. This is what we call a request for proposal. This will be publicly advertised and it will undergo a solicitation process that typically takes about a month, month and a half to complete. So we ask that you work with our office to facilitate this process. Same for goods and services, same bid thresholds. We have an option under $250,000 to avoid a formal bid process and just reach out to 2 small business firms, get a quote, just a simple written quote, and we can award to a small business under $250,000. Information technology is a little bit different. The limit for IT related products or services is $50,000 to $500,000. Again, under 50K, we recommend that you get at least 3 quotes, but that is not mandatory. Between 50K and $500,000, we do an informal process. Anything over $500,000 has to undergo a formal bid, advertised bidding process, as well as actually the new threshold for this. Yeah, no, it is. It's $500,000. I think the solicitation plan is only required for procurements over $1 million. I have to double check that. I think that just recently changed. But for sure, anything over $500,000 will have to undergo a formal bid process. We have provided a couple of links here for your review to just help you through understanding this process. And of course, all requests for IT goods and services are subject to the accessibility and IT requirements, and we will have to undergo those 3 layers of approval before we process anything. All right, so the CSU as a whole is rolled out a plan called 23C plan. All 23 campuses plus the CSU Chancellor's Office have been assigned a goal to achieve. This is what we call a procurement benefit, and it could either be associated with cost savings, it could be cost avoidance, it could be any like revenue that we're generating, that we count as this procurement benefit. How does procurement assist the campus? So we have rolled out this 23C plan to essentially assist with providing the end user with what we can do for you. We can help you more than just, process a purchase order. We can be of benefit to the campus. So we have been tasked over the past 3 years. We have new goals now for the next 3 years, but for fiscal year 18-19, 19-20, and 2021, we were tasked with the first year that the program rolled out, or the initiative rolled out. We were tasked with achieving $275,000 in savings, processing, POs for goods, for services, conducting solicitations, any benefit that we can claim as savings, avoiding costs, or any other benefit for the university. For that first year, we achieved $316,443 in procurement benefit by going through our office and allowing us to help you through some of your solicitation processes. In year 2, we were tasked with achieving $375,000, and we actually did really well on this year. We achieved $1.1 million in procurement benefit. And then for year 3, we were tasked with $550,000. And then in year 3, we achieved $782,905 in procurement benefit. All right, some items to remember. Please do not place an order with the vendors. When you are requesting a quote, it is just simply to request a quote. Please advise the vendor to wait for a purchase order before they deliver any goods or provide any services. Never sign a vendor document, no quote, no proposal, no intent to enter into a contract. Anything that will contractually or financially bind the university, please route through our office and we will process that for you. PO problems should be discussed directly with the buyer, and on our website under FAQ, it will take you through who is the buyer assigned to your order. In case you have any questions or need to submit any change requests, please work directly with the buyer that process your initial request. You are responsible for following up on outstanding orders. So if we issue a purchase order for a good or a service, we turn it over to you once the PO is sent to the vendor and the requester receives a copy. The individual who you have designated as the project contact on that PO is going to be the person responsible for ensuring that their good is delivered or their service is completed. Signed invoices should be sent directly to accounts payable. Our office does not handle or process invoices. And finally, we have some important web pages that we have listed there for you so that you can go and review our procurement and contracts information, trainings, P-card policy, we've listed here, direct pay, hospitality forms, and CSU contracts and procurement policy. This is the overarching CSU system-wide policy that we refer back to. So the system-wide policy is the overarching policy, and then the campuses are responsible for implementing the policy by creating its own more defined policies and procedures. All right, I know that I went over quite a bit of information. So as I mentioned, this training will be posted on our website along with all of the slides. It'll take about, maybe 30 minutes for this to, to save on my computer, and then I will upload it onto the website. But any questions from all of that? That was a lot. All right, so yes, Natasha, this presentation will be available. You can feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question or type it in the chat. That was a lot. That was a lot that we just went over. Great, okay. Well, thank you. I hope you found this helpful and that you have at least one takeaway that'll help you in your process. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to anybody in my team. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.